Welcome back to Tamara Bowling Video Ball Reviews. Today we have the new Storm IQ Tour Ruby. If you want to see more of our content, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. If you like what we do, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and check us out on Patreon. First impression, folks, we have a winner. Every tester loved the IQ Tour Ruby. Okay, before we jump in, there are a few things to address. First, this is yet another remake of the IQ Tour Pearl. We've seen it in gold, 30, and emerald, all in the R2S cover of the same core, so identical aside from color. Second, we've tested the others, and we didn't have a unanimous and resounding enjoyment across all testers before for whatever reason. And that segues into the third topic, which may be the reason for the second. I'm not sure what's going on with the factory finishes from Storm lately, but we haven't been happy with any of the React-to-Gloss out-of-box finishes. With that said, a somewhat simple but slightly annoying solution is to refinish before we put holes, so we took it to hard 1000, then step 2 compound, and a light 3000 scuff by hand. And this is likely to be our go-to for all Storm Pearls for the foreseeable future. Now let's look at the ball reaction. As we've come to know R2S very well, it's a great cover for the late and strong ball reaction. It glides down lane quite easily, but has a good responsiveness to friction. Traditionally, I haven't been able to play any R2S ball up the outside in the friction, and that's the case with the Ruby as well. But once I open up a bit, it's magic. Despite the typical high over-under we see from this wet-dry house pattern, the IQ Tour Ruby just worked amazingly well. Yes, clean, but that round shape that booms controllably from the C3 centripetal core just creates a blend that's hard to get sometimes out of a skid snap type shape that fills the mid-late ball category. In the zone somewhere between second and third arrow, I had good forgiveness, could miss in and out, but I would say out was better. I had to be careful with speed, as if I hit it a bit and didn't keep the speed up, it can dive. It's really the nature of the cover. What distinguishes this ball from other mid-late balls, for me, is what it does as you get in or on sport shots. It becomes a little smoother when you throw it into the volume, and that as opposed to just puking completely. So as you move in, you start to see a more archy shape that still gives you pocket. Many mid-late balls, including ones that we've tested recently, have what I call a thin shape, which is obvious when you move in and you just leave buckets once you surpass that sort of fine line. Just watch the ball reaction as I move in. Even past the fourth arrow, it looks soft, yes, but still struck. It just means that I have confidence to be able to move deep with no issues when the pattern calls for it. Now let's have a look at Tyler throwing the IQ Tour Ruby, and it looked awesome for him. Just seems to split the 8-9 so often. It just seems to balance the cover strength and core shape and specs so well. And we've struggled at times to work these mid-late balls on this house shot due to its heavily cliffed characteristics, as I've mentioned. So it was so refreshing to test a mid-late ball that was like, what cliff? Again, I have to attribute some of this to our resurface, to really, taking better advantage of the cover stock characteristics and better blending this pattern. But Tyler could easily see the Ruby in his arsenal because of how confidence-inspiring the shape was. Many times, as mentioned, you risk a bucket when missing in on the house shot, but here the ball, somehow, even with the R2S, seemed to kind of ignore that, almost pretending to be bigger than it is. In fact, the miss-in could be punishing, especially if you aren't super careful with speed. It's the same as I saw. This is a pretty traditional mid-late shape that Storm has always been able to perfect and hard to replicate by other brands. Now let's take a look at Brian with the IQ Tour Ruby. I already made it clear that right from the get-go it looked good for all of us, so it shouldn't be any surprise here. Honing in on the Ruby's use case, it's really for those higher friction conditions or later in the shift when the pattern opens up and you need a clean and strong shape where you want to use some angle. The IQ Tour Ruby, as you expect, is clean but is a bit of a chameleon with the back-end reaction. But I mean that in a great way. Brian struck a lot. He can go anywhere between 8 and 12 with the arrows. The closer he played to the friction, the sharper the reaction and the entry angle. Seems obvious. The more in he played, the more archy. But the shape, the more archy the shape was, but they all struck. And the test was proving successful in terms of identifying strengths and weaknesses. He was able to keep edging in and really had all kinds of goodness happening. It was refreshing to find the ball so versatile that all three of us liked it, and from many different parts of the lane. final thoughts. The IQ Tour Ruby is really a very strong mid-late option. I said this recently in that Storm family has huge overlap with the mid-late ball category, including Night Road, Fate, Phase 5 High Roads, Electrifies, Revenant, Hype, Hustles, Wolverine, Burnout Pro. I mean, yes, they're all slightly different, but as I've said before, when building an arsenal, it's about use case. And for me, the Night Road really stood out to me from that recent crop. Now with the IQ Tour Ruby, subjectively, it's as easy to recommend as it is objectively.